So I've had a few requests by a number of my students that are raw beginners to try to help them make it through the opening using principles. And if they're lacking in memory, they wanted something that's they can play with both colors, and it's hard to find something that you can recommend as a one-size-fits-all for both colors. And it's essentially an impossibility in chess. But the closest opening that I can come up with is the universal hippo. And I think being precise with move order is kind of important here, because the picturesque position of what you're going for with the hippo is this picture. So we've got both bishops fianchettoed. We built the house to live in it. And we've got both the knights in front of the royalty. And you will occasionally see h3 and a3 being played as well. So it's always a important thing to know where your pieces are going. And hey, if you can get it on both sides of the board, fantastic. And let's go through step by step how to reach this end position. Now, I prefer starting with b3, and this is because the move that is more typical if black's going to play something here would be g6 to fianchetto on the king side. So if we started with g3, this move could be annoying because b3 in the follow-up. So the only thing that can really mess up your hippo is if they're trying to do the mirror image thing. And what we're going to see is I just want to put a pawn in the way of his bishop in order to get what I want, or develop our knight to another square. So in this case, bishop b2, bishop b7, and I'm just going to put my knight on f3. Don't have to worry about long diagonal problems. And say black plays knight f6, and we get a bit of a copycat situation. And knight is still going in front of the royalty. And here we have a very reasonable position for white. And you can either look for c4 or e4 as the standard breaks there. You say, well, doesn't e4 lose a pawn? We do have a tactical idea here of knight g5, and it's a game. So b3, e5 is going to be far more typical than the only exception, which is a fianchetto. So we attack the pawn, they defend, and this is what you want to see, because the only real weakness that the hippo has is it doesn't take any space. We've got everybody in the first three ranks. So if black realizes what's going on, they should be taking all the space, get 4 pawns up here and look to try to press you off the board. Those were the only lines when I played a bunch of practice games with this where I ran into any trouble against players, say north of 2200, is when they come after you all guns blazing. But most players have their automatic system that they like to play. When they see b3, they think Nimzo Larsen. Okay, e5, bishop b2, you attack my pawn. And then g3, all right, well, it's taking the center, supposed to be good. d3, followed by e3, and that blunts this bishop. And after castles, knight e2, knight d2. And it's important to understand the dynamics of how to play this position. Say, for instance, if e4, we lock the position, and then we're going to break. Most of the dynamics of the hippo is understanding how to play when the center is locked. In this case, it points like an arrow where we should be playing. So we're playing for c4. So let's lock it the other way then, d4. All right, well, castles, and we play for the f4 break. So hopefully you're getting some basic ideas of how to play the hippo and structurally what to do, what the plan is once you get your pieces where they're going. So let's flip it around and take a look at, well, what's something that can mess us up? Because the extra move does make a difference. g3, b6. If he's hitting our rook, well, we're just going to play d5, and this is one of the only lines where we can't get our desired hippo. We're just going to defend the pawn. And what we end up getting is a classical position where black is going to play for c5, and you want to take back with a pawn. That way you are getting a hanging pawn's position, and white has some slight pull there, but there are players who have made a living off of playing hanging pawns positions, and one of the great ones to study is Sergei Karyakin, specifically in his run in order to face Magnus. I believe he had a game versus Nakamura in the candidates, so I would check that one out. But I definitely know he had a game in the candidates, which was absolutely sick with the hanging pawns coming from a Queen's Indian. So if they don't do the fianchetto, the good news is, say we'll kick it back to move 1, we're going to get the exact same image, colors reversed, with our hippo. And what I plan on doing through the course of the rest of this series is playing a bunch of games with the hippo, and hopefully it can highlight the middle game ideas for you. So if you're looking for something to play in, especially faster time controls, the faster the time controls, the more viable this opening is, in my opinion. You're looking for a bullet weapon, universal, especially to play against computers. I'm reminded back in the day on the Internet Chess Club, Nakamura used to have 1-1 matches with the engines on ICC back in the day, and he would play the hippo on both sides because the engine's opening book would kind of get devoided as you're playing weird moves in the opening to reach a position. So the human could play it faster, picking up some time where it's going to be needed later, and you can lock up the position without too much trouble. So interesting anti-computer strategies kind of stemming from Kasparov and theories facing systems like Deep Blue back in the day. Does it work anymore? Not as much. Engines are much stronger, but it still works against weaker engines. So that'll do it for our introduction. So now let's jump on Lichess and get some games with the hippo, shall we? All right, let's kick it off with a few games of 1 minute playing the hippo. And let me get the audio going, because when I'm playing, I like to hear the click of the piece. Makes me play a little bit faster. So we lock it up as he insists, and I'm okay this so far. All right, I'm going to go f3 there just to bother the bishop. And we're going to go a3. Well, look at that, he's castling queenside, so let's get a little bit of an extension over here. Get the queen out of the way. And this is normally not the way, but in this case, we've got some decent options for squares. And I'm kind of a fan of this type of idea where we are relatively safe. And let's just cover some key squares. And I'm going to get the queen out of the way so the rook can get over here if necessary, which it looks pretty necessary, yeah. Rook h1 is probably better, but keeping tension, always something to consider. And you know what, let's bring the lady over here because he is trying to invade, and time is going to be a factor, and I don't mind playing defense in a game because finally I'm starting to get some light in the position here. And let's go ahead and clip that, and space is nice. We'll do that. No, no, no. I said no, you didn't listen. Uh-oh. Too late. And that's all she wrote. Okay, so first one out of the way there. And of course in 1 minute games, it's not going to be as clean, but probably the main emphasis is when the position got locked, you need to play in a certain way. And Probably knight e2 is more accurate now that I'm thinking about it more, and if queen d7, h3, g4, followed by f4 at some point. Probably castles first. And don't be too intimidated by this type of thing. I think we're getting reasonable play here. See how much the engine hates it. How much do you hate it? You don't hate it, you just hate it. All right, so let's get a few more of these 1-minute games in and have some fun with it. All right, b3. I didn't like the idea of allowing d3, which is why I'm kind of getting the same sort of position that we had before. And this time we're going to change it up and play better. Typically a good idea, a good move. As friend Eric Cook would like to say, I think you wanted me to take the other way. I'm covering that though. So I'm just gonna remove myself from any of that. Queen c6, we'll just take on d4. And about that, pressure the e-pawn. And time to undermine things and attack. Looks like a good time. And let's just go ahead and grab the stuff. That looks annoying. Rook's hitting the queen. And can we mate here? Looks like we can. All right, so that was a little bit better example game with the Hippo there. Where, again, I don't mind wasting a tempo to get the closed position. And a3 can, in fact, encourage the bishop to come in. But I wanted the knight covering the square. And my opponent just saw a ghost here. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen d4 check is good because that will win the piece. But capturing the other way just gives me a pawn. And here I want to play f4, but this pin is kind of annoying. I am getting rid of any discovered attack with king h1. I am a safety first type of player. Now I'm looking to undermine the knight. So here I finally get the idea, okay, I can play f4, but now it comes with tempo. If he takes, he loses this piece, and if not, f5, he's losing the other piece. And we finally get that space that I'm always looking for. And I'm happy to trade down as I start seeing plans like rook f3, rook h3, leading to mate. And we have mate on the board. So let's do a few more in this first video. And we'll go b6, hitting the pawn. They didn't defend it. I will take free stuff. And then we're going to go back to hippoing after we get our free stuff. So he's going faster. I respect that. I like that. And in fact, because he's got a nice aggressive setup to come after my king, I'm going to go the other way. Yeah, let's go this way, shall we? And see if we can't undermine the attack a bit. Rook lifts for the win. And okay. I just wanted development there. I'm not too worried about weaknesses and whatnot. Let's improve our pieces. Hit that pawn. Alrighty. And you know what? I'm needing to play a bit faster here. So I'm just going to start negotiating the position a bit. D5's probably a good move. We'll go e5. And we have the worst pawn structure now. Opponent played that very adequately, we should say. And looking for f4 at the right moment. Seems like a good time. And I like his knight, so wanted to kind of set that, and looks like we can get away with that. And stuff's going to move, so let's go ahead and keep an eye on the long diagonal. And not a bad game by my opponent at all. So when they give you the pawn, take it. And as we can see, there is flexibility with the Hippo structure. I see a lot of aggressive intent by my opponent, so I go the other way. And then my follow-up definitely was lackluster in here. Queen takes h4. I just had free stuff that I could be taking all throughout here. Rook takes h4, but I unnecessarily developed, and why not take free pieces? Just being overly courteous, I guess, and looking to emphasize structure. Again, take the free stuff. Messing around far too much in the position. But at no point in time was Black ever really in trouble. And then here it gets really bad as White's pieces get bottled up. Bishop g2 is definitely a strong consideration, and time is always a factor in these 1-minute games. So how about a couple more, and we'll finish up the 1-minute segment and go to longer time controls. All right. Again, we see that 1300 range player dropping some material, and here I actually really wanted to play d5 there, but our opponent is making certain moves which kind of forced my hand a bit to play a little bit differently. Really wanted to trade queens and check for the sake of checking. All right, now I'll check for the sake of checking. The extra knights help. They definitely help. So let's see how clinical we can be here. Seems like a good place to start. We'll leave your pawns doubled. King's starting to get light on squares there. Yeah. Let's do this kind of stuff, shall we? Yeah, looks good enough. And don't be afraid to swap up the plan. Don't be dogmatic and just essentially go for the Hippo no matter what. Here, I'm going for some of the Hippo moves, but I'm seeing the stutter step with the queen. I'm like, all right, I thought about d5, but now getting some time, pressure the d5 pawn, encouraging the take. And I've got some good threats here. Bishop takes, c5 threatening c4. These are the ideas that I'm looking at, but after takes, it's just too much material as we end up getting a position that, too many guys. And here's an important note for my players starting out. Here, when you're down material, you don't want to allow trades. c3 is definitely the better move than knight c3. Bishop b4 was a fishing attempt. I know it's a mediocre move, but judging by the rest of the game from my opponent, I'm seeing if he will make my life easier by allowing me to trade down more. And White's rook's never really gotten to the game here, so that's exactly what you want. And how about one more to finish this set out with our first of the Hippo videos. And we'll start off with a double fianchetto. We'll get our knights in. I'll go ahead and tuck the nugget away. And let's play some solid moves. Our opponent's playing solid moves, so okay, I'll do the same. And now he's starting to run out of plan because he's gone through the motions here. And okay, so now I'll change the character of the position. I'm not in a hurry to play f4 because the center's not locked. I am more of a fan of placing some pressure. And as I say, don't play f4. Here, I need to cement the pawn. So it seems kind of critical. All right, we'll go for that. And b5 looks like a good square. All right, not too worried about that yet. Fishing. And got the fish. You always look for the overworked piece. So that was a pretty reasonable Hippo example. As we get the solid position. And the typical super Hippo. And I can do this because my opponent isn't showing any aggressive attempt. He's not pushing pawns in the center. He's not forcing me to change anything. So I'm going to get the most out of my position. And then finally, e4 to break things up. And I see the potential of using some squares. So I go e5. Computer hated it, of course. Now rook a d8. And saying I'm having some trouble, but overall I did find knight c3 followed by knight b5, so it did not hate my play at this point. Queen a8 was, I felt like, the only move, and I wasn't sure what to do there, but rook e1 makes a large amount of sense, eyeing the critical squares. e5 is not playable as we have rook takes e5 because of the pin. Makes sense. But queen b8, looking to go after the c6 knight, which was only defended by the queen, which is the worst defender. Easy to kick around. So that will do it for our first Hippo video, the universal Hippo. Hopefully it gives you some ideas of how to play the middle game from the typical structure.